Alright, let's do a sound check. 1, 2, 7, 93. Let's try again. 1, 2, 3, 7. Well, that's no good. I wonder what the deal is with the sound not working for some. Alright, well, let's see. Let's try again with this. I restarted the thing. Hmm. Okay. Well, wait a minute. Maybe, maybe BP can fix it. Yeah, let's see if this works. 1, 2, 17. Anyone hear it? See if this works. 1, 2, 17. Anyone hear it? Okay, then we'll go with that, if that's going to work. Alright, well, I don't mind working this way. This is fine. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all here, and it's good that you could make it, and we're going to have some fun today with layers and doing different lighting effects and stuff. So for those of you that haven't seen first two the first two lessons on layers, I did post links to them in the forum on the thread for this class, so you should be able to go back later and check them out. And what you're seeing on the screen now is an example of the first thing we're going to do. I'm going to show you how to go about creating something like this. We'll actually remake this picture and go through the steps very slowly and show you how to do something along these lines. And in the process, hopefully you'll learn some interesting techniques that you can use in your own artwork. Alright, so I'm going to begin with a square canvas, brand new, blank, and white. It's the snowman in a snowstorm picture that Anonymous always uploads. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is fill the very bottom layer with black. So we'll open up the layer menu. That's the little menu up there in the top left corner. Looks like a couple pieces of paper on top of each other. And we will choose the bottommost layer, the one at the bottom, and choose fill color, and then we'll make it black. Okay, so now we have black. This is the same scene as previously, but now it's at night. Yay! Okay, so now we pick the next layer up, the one right above the black layer. We choose that, and we're going to use the cloud brush. The cloud brush is usually the fourth one in the list of the standard brushes. I'm just going to use that one. And we'll pick kind of an orangey color. And we'll just kind of draw, kind of randomly around there. Then we'll change the color a little bit we won't change the hue, but we'll change the value. So we'll make it a little darker, a little lighter, and we'll continue to kind of mold the clouds until we get something that looks okay to us. Alright, so I put a little bit more lighter color up at the top right and the darker colors at the bottom left, just to make it look a little bit 3D. It's not, it doesn't have to be anything in particular here. It's just sort of a cloudy shape. So our desire here is to create this sort of silhouette effect, and we're going to use a heart shape. And the way we create that is, well, first we have to go to another layer, a layer above the cloud layer. And what we're going to do is use the vector tool. So let's choose the vector tool. And in the settings, we want fill to be on, opacity to be 100%, and then we're going to take and turn the simplify up very high, something like this. I'm going to try it at 26 right now and see how that works. What simplify does is it will smooth out when you draw. You can only draw so smoothly. Your hand moves a little bit. The simplify will simplify the shape and make it smoother. High values of simplify, like the one I'm using now, can actually change the shape in ways you don't expect. But in this case, I believe it's going to work the way we want it to work. Yes, it's being recorded. So now we're going to choose the mirror mode horizontal. You can see that there's now this horizontal line down the middle of my canvas. That means that as I draw, it will mirror whatever I draw left to right. So what I'm going to try to do is draw half of a heart shape on one side and let mirror create the exact opposite on the other side. That way it will be nice and symmetrical. I choose complete black for this. I'm going to make a black silhouette of a heart. Let's see how well I do it. Sometimes it takes a couple tries to get it right. But the idea is to draw half of the heart and let mirror do the other half. Alright, that one's pretty good except for the little tail at the bottom, so I'm going to just erase that little tail off of it. And the way I'm going to erase it is I'll set the vector tool to erase now. Get rid of that simplification part, and then I will just erase that little piece off the bottom that way. Alright, there we are. That's pretty good. Now I'm going to turn off the mirroring, and I'm going to move the heart around a little bit, make it a little bigger. Now if you haven't used the transform function before, it's part of the layer menu. You choose the layer you want to transform. That means you can scale it, resize it, move it, and you choose transform, and then just using two fingers you can pinch and zoom and transform and move things around a little bit. So I'm going to do that with the heart because I made it a little small. I'm going to make it a little bigger. So for those of you who are watching closely, I moved it with my fingers by pinching and zooming until it was more the size I wanted. And then I actually brought up the settings for the transform tool. The reason I did that was because I wanted to make sure that the angle was 0, meaning I had not rotated it, and that it was still in the center, so that X delta was also 0. So I set those both to 0, and then I closed it up, and there we have the heart nicely centered over our beautiful cloud. Alright, so now we've got a silhouette of a heart with this glowy kind of cloud behind it. It's not too exciting, but interesting. So now we want to mess around with it a little bit. So we're going to first make an exact copy of the heart on another layer. And in order to do that, we need to have an empty layer underneath the layer that the heart is on. Right now we don't have an empty layer underneath it, so I'm just going to drag one down. And the way you do that is you can drag a layer by touching and holding on the right hand edge of it where it looks like three little stripes. Then you can drag the layer around and reorder it. So we'll drag an empty one down underneath the heart. Alright, now we have our empty layer underneath there. So we choose the layer the heart is on by selecting it. Just tap it to select, and then choose copy to copy it down. Okay, so now we have two copies of the heart. We're going to choose the one that we just copied, the one that's below the other, and we're going to use the filter to change its color. We're going to use the invert filter in this case. So what you do here is you pick the layer that the heart is on, choose filter, choose the invert filter, and say okay. That will turn it white because the inverse of black is white. Of course, you can't see it now that I've done that because it's directly behind the other one. So we're going to use a transform tool again. Filter, layer, transform, and we're going to move it a little bit so you can see it back there. Yes, actually it it does look kind of like an eclipse now, doesn't it? All right, so we have. I mean, this is an interesting effect in itself, and you might be able to use it for something. But we're going to play a little bit with the back part. We're going to blur it and make it look a little bit more like light is peeking out behind. So with that in mind, we'll keep that same layer selected. We'll choose the filter tool again, and this time we will use Gaussian blur as the filter. Gaussian blur is a very fuzzy kind of blur. It's similar to the way that light spreads out, so it will work really nicely for this. I used a value of 16 for the blur, but you can experiment with other values, of course, see what they do. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a little technique that I use sometimes to do light beams, because what we want to create here is some light beams coming out from the heart. So I pick a new layer, the one that's above all these other layers, and I'm going to use the vector tool set to complete white. We'll use white for the light beams. You can make them other colors, but we'll use white right now. Make sure that fill is on and the simplicity is set down to 1 or 2 or something like that. And then we'll set the mode, the drawing mode, to square. And that's from this little menu right here. And now we draw a big square thing in the middle like this. Except it's not going to be square, it's going to be a rectangle. Isn't it lovely? Alright. Now we change the vector's drawing mode to erase. and we use that to erase some parts of the rectangle, like this. Alright, so now we have basically some parallel lines. And we're going to now use the transform tool to change these into diverging lines. And the way we'll do that is we'll use the corners. When you bring up the transform tool, it has these little corners on it that look like round circles. And if you hold your finger down on one of them long enough, a couple of seconds, you can move just that one. So we will take the top two and we'll move them closer together like this. So now we have some diverging lines, and I'm going to copy that again because I want to play around with it a little bit. So before I do that, I'm going to create a new layer and make a copy of the lines layer so that I can have two of them to experiment with. Alright, so now I have two of them. We'll go back to our good old friend Gaussian blur, and we'll blur both of these. We'll blur them both slightly differently. Give one a little more blur than the other so they're not identical. So now we have some reasonable facsimiles of light beams, and I will use the transform tool again to move these around so that it looks like they're beaming out at us from the heart somewhere. And save so that we don't lose what we've got so far. Alright, so now we will merge those two layers together to save us a layer because they're just going to stay there. And to merge layers together, you pick the one above and you say merge, or the one below and you say merge down, and no, the one above, the one above, and say merge down. That will combine them. In this case, they're both still set to just normal blending, so we won't have any problems with the merge. It'll just merge. Alright, so now we reselect the layer above that's now empty. And we're going to use the vector tool again. This time we're going to set it to a circle. And we'll draw a white circle. Now there's no way to force it to be a circle, so you just have to do it by eye. But as long as it's close to a circle, it'll be good enough for what we're doing. And don't forget that we had the vector set to erase. We have to set it back to over, otherwise nothing will happen. Alright, so now I have my white circle on top. I'm going to use our old friend Gaussian blur on this guy. And then transform it until it's about where I want it to be. Okay, so now we have what looks sort of like a hole with light beams coming out of it. And again, we can go ahead and merge this circle layer down onto the light beams layer because we don't need them separate anymore, and we can save ourselves a layer. Now I'd like to add a little bit of more color to the background. So what I'm going to do is take one of the layers, empty layers, the one that we have right now, we have an empty layer at the top, so we'll just use that, and we'll move it down so that it's right above the cloud layer. And now we select that layer for the drawing, and we're going to pick a brush. It doesn't even really matter too much what brush you pick. Something with a little texture to it would be interesting. So I'll just find a texture-y kind of brush and pick that one. We still have shapes set to circles, so that's good. And now we'll pick some, I don't know, reds and yellows, and we'll draw with them. See what we get. Alright, so we got some reds and oranges to make it look fiery, kind of. And now we're going to do some smudging. We'll have some fun with this with the smudge tool. If you haven't used the smudge tool before, it's really a lot of fun. So, for this we're going to pick the hard round brush, smudge tool. And we'll set the strength to maybe 80% or so. And the size, I don't know, not too big. We'll just kind of look at it. What brush was that? I don't even know. It was some spotty brush that I have in there. So, yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, you'll get a different effect with other brushes, but, almost all of them will be kind of cool, as long as it's a kind of a texture-ish brush. Alright, so for the smudge, we're going to use, like I said, the hard round brush. Set it to about 80%. Set the spacing to 0. Make sure that the spacing is 0. And then for a size, I'm going to start with 32 and see if that's too small or big. And the other thing I'll do is I'm going to set the shape now to line. Right up there, line. What that does is it will not draw until I release. So I put my finger down, I drag it, it draws a little line, and when I let go, the smudge will happen, and it will happen in a perfect straight line, which is what I wanted to do. I want to smudge some straight lines in that layer that I just created. And now I'm going to actually transform that layer a little bit so it's more centered behind the heart. It's a little bit off to the side. All right, there we are. Yeah, the tools are fun. There's so many things you can do with them. All right. Part of it is experimenting, and part of it is understanding what each one does and all the settings. There's so many. So now that we have that, we're going to smudge a little more, but this time we'll turn the line shape off so we have freehand. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to smudge the layer underneath, the one that has the clouds on it. And as I do this, I'm going to do these kind of little wavy patterns. I'm going to attempt to make it look sort of like flames, if I can. There we go. Alright, well, yeah, it's flamey enough for now. Alright, so we'll save our picture so far because we don't want to lose our work. Now for the next part, we're going to add a dodge layer. Well, maybe I won't add the dodge. We'll get to the dodge layer later. I think we'll do the text next. Because this is the SketchClub Rocks picture, we have to do SketchClub Rocks. So we'll need a new layer on top. new layer, and we will choose the text tool, and we'll pick a pretty font, and we'll type in the word SketchClub Rocks. So I've got what, Zapartino or something font. I didn't even know I had that. I found it at the bottom though. I typed in SketchClub Rocks. I've got a size of 130 set there. I don't know if that's right yet. Opacity should be 100%. Spacing 200%. Make sure the velocity and repeat are off. And then set the shape again to line so that we can draw the text in a straight line. And we'll use a nice bright yellow color too for this. A little too small. I'm going to make it the font size a little bigger. That's better. Okay, so now we have a yellow SketchClub Rocks. Let's move it a little bit higher. There we go. Alright, so now, now that I have that, I'm going to make an exact copy of that, the same way as we did before, using the copy down. So I need to make a new layer, put it underneath my text layer, and then copy my text layer down onto it, so I have two copies of that. New layer, put it underneath, pick the layer that has the text on it, and say copy down. Alright, now that I have it there, I choose the layer that I copied to, the underlying layer, and I'm going to use the filter to change the color of it. In this case, we're going to use the color adjustment filter, and we will play with the hue and brightness controls until we get more of a reddish. Oops, it crashed. Alright, let me do it again. You guys still with me? Alright. Filter. Color adjustment. And change it to red. What I wound up doing was changing the hue to -49, the saturation to 1.56, and then I turned the brightness down to -66. You just kind of have to play around with those until you get a color that you want. In this case I wanted red, so I had to change it to red. Alright, so now I have I have a red one underneath the yellow one, but you can't see it because it's directly under there. So I'm going to use that same trick we used before and transform it a little bit down and to the right this time, basically making a sort of red drop shadow of the text. Alright, let's see if it's working now. Hello? 1, 2. Okay, we got sound back. Okay, so if we missed all of that, probably did, we made a new layer on the top, right there. We filled it with black, and we set the blend mode to dodge. And since it's all black, it has no effect at this point. But we're going to draw on it. We'll pick the soft round brush, the standard soft round brush, right there. And we pick a color that is a dark gray. The dark gray will, since it's lighter than black, will cause the underlying layers to brighten up some. We don't want to get too much. If you use white, it'll be too much, so I'm going to use just a dark gray. We'll use white eventually, probably. Alright, so I'm going to draw on the dodge layer in a few places, like where the light is peeking out from behind the heart, and on a few places maybe on the text to make it look more like it's glowing. And I think I need a little bit lighter than that, so let's try halfway through to get the more of an effect here. There we go. And it sort of brightened up a few spots, makes it look a little bit more powerful, as though light was beaming out of there, flashing off of it. Now I'm going to choose a different brush. You can use almost any sparkles kind of brush. There are a number of them up there in the library, sparkles of different kinds. I'm going to pick one that's pretty simple. It's mostly just little dots of light. Put the opacity at 100. Don't know what size we'll use. I'll try 63, but this is just little dots. You could also use something like this, one of the sparkle ones. But I'm going to use the round ones. And I have it set for some scatter and pretty far spacing. Scatter on this one is set to 2%. Spacing is 120. I've also got the jitter turned up a little bit. Flow jitter, that will make it like some of them lighter and some of them darker. Rotation doesn't matter much since this is just a circle, but size jitter will mean as you draw, the size of the objects will change. And spacing jitter will actually affect the spacing so that they're not all spaced identical. That just kind of gives them a little bit of interest. And we're going to set this to white, and we're going to draw over top. So we'll be on the dodge layer still. And since we've chosen white, it will make whatever's underneath it extremely bright. And the result will be some sort of like little sparkles. They'll look like little sparkles. Alright, this is still on the dodge layer. So you can see it looks like little, little light beams or light balls or whatever coming out of there. Oh, look, a squirrel. And now we'll use the same technique that we used before when we smudged, where we use a smudge tool and the shape set to line, and we can use that to make some of these little circles have little beams coming out of them. The way you do that is you pick the smudge tool, smudge. You can use the hard round or the soft round, either one. I'll use the hard round here. We'll make it pretty small though, like a size of 10 maybe. Strength to 78 is fine. And we set the shape to line, and then we'll pick like one of these guys. Let's take this one here, and we draw this out here and we smudge it so it looks like little beams are coming out of it. Those are actually too big. Let me decrease the size of my brush. Let's see, what should we use? Let's try 5, or let's try 7. 7 is the closest I can get. There we go. Make some little twinkly kinds of things. Then let's see, let's increase the strength of it up to about 85, and the size a little smaller. Try 4, and we'll add a couple of those to the white circle. I have to find the layer that's on. So this is the layer where the white circle is. I want to add a couple of those there too. Yeah. Laser beams, man. Alright. So we did a bunch of stuff there. Before I go any further, is there any questions that anyone has about what happened here so far? Let's save this out. Alright, so I guess no questions. Alright, so we'll finish this off. We'll go down to the very bottom layer down here. We'll choose merge all, and then we'll choose the filter. We'll use color adjustment, and we'll turn the saturation up a little bit maybe. We might add another little bit of vibrance filter, since we want this to be extremely vibrant. Vibrance filter, something like that. There we are. So that we now have a very bright, exciting picture. And we save that off into another slot. SketchClub rocks. Alright, so there's no questions? Everyone's good? Then I want to thank you all for coming to watch. I hope you had fun. I'll be doing another one on other types of lighting effects, more aimed toward faces and stuff in the future. So I hope you enjoyed this class.